we would like to know, just give us a
Mm-hmm.
brief introduction of yourself. We would like to know the trajectory from Nigeria all through to
Mm-hmm.
now and what you're doing.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much, first of all, for inviting me, and welcome to everyone who's here. I always say that if you attend any of these sessions, it definitely means you're focused, very driven about your future. So it's great that you're here, and I'm glad to be here. So a little bit about me. I grew up in Nigeria, in Ibadan. I say it's the best city to grow up in Nigeria. It's pretty chill, but at the same time has a fantastic university, the University of Ibadan, which is where I studied law. So I studied there. I finished with a first class because the reason is that I was hyper focused right from uni, right? I knew that I wanted to get a master's abroad possibly a PhD, which I'm doing right now. So I knew that one of the things I could do to improve my chances was pretty much do well in school. So I did that. But as I will explain to you, having good grades is not really all that matters. And that's something that I have found out over the years. But if you're still in school or you can work on your grades, I definitely encourage you to do that. Grades are never old. So I finished from there, and then I went to law school in Lagos. I did quite well there as well, and started working in a top law firm in Lagos. But I always had a very clear perspective that I wanted to do a master's abroad, just to, get like a feel of a better education system and, really just expand my horizon. So I got into the University of Cambridge on a Commonwealth Shared Scholarship. That was in 2014. And I, pretty much, went fully funded. It was, the kind of scholarship where you get everything plus your flight. You don't even have to pay for like visas. You get like an allowance when you go to school for winter and all of that. So it was a really great experience. And coming off of that experience, I felt like it was just like, what Lois is doing at this time. I felt like it was going to be a disservice if I couldn't help other people achieve similar dreams. And so I started GetIn Education Consulting, which is a social enterprise that helps people like you get into top schools around the world. And we do this mostly through our graduate school bootcamp, which we have coming up soon. So that was it. And then I finished my master's and I went back to Nigeria. I worked for a little while and then decided that it was time to do a PhD. And so I decided to come to Canada. So I'm currently doing a PhD at University of Toronto, where I've also been very fortunate to get a couple of scholarships, including the Vanier Doctoral Scholarships, which is one of the biggest for PhD candidates in Canada. I also got the Delta Kappa Gamma Scholarship, the PEO Scholarship, the New College, doctoral fellowship, and a few of them. But over the years, I've really helped a lot of people through GetIn to pursue graduate studies in different parts of the world. So I've seen a few applications and I've seen how this thing works, and I probably have one or two things you might be able to pick from my experiences.
I'm sure we have thousands of things we'll be able to pick from your experiences. At the end of this talk, I'm telling you, nobody comes in contact with the Mariam and you're not vamped up to do something. And that's one of the energy I love about her. I've been following her for a while, so we got the chance to connect. And I feel like, I've learned a lot over the years. And so I'll just tell you straight away, you're doing amazing. You're doing a great job.
Thank you.
So keep it up. So we'll go right into it. Now, people have the ideology that everybody wants to study in Canada. So, but people don't have the money to, afford all the food, tuition, the accommodation and all that. So, I want to know, how do you get a school in Canada, and what are the various scholarships one needs to look out for when it comes to studying in Canada?
Okay, great. So the first thing I always say is, if you're interested in studying abroad on a scholarship, you have to be ready to do research. You will do research to the extent that your computer knows what you're about to type before you even type it. You have to be so committed to the process. Why? Because this is a competition. So you're sitting there in Abuja thinking, it might be nice to go to Canada on a scholarship. There's somebody in Vietnam thinking the exact same thing. There's somebody in Pakistan thinking the exact same thing. There's somebody in the US thinking the exact same thing. So the first thing, before I even talk about, looking for opportunities and things like that, is having the right mindset that this is a competition, right? Nobody's guaranteed a scholarship. It's not anybody's birthright, but you have to throw your hat in and compete. And then, hopefully you're selected if you submit a great application. So if you want to study in Canada, there are a few advantages and disadvantages in that. Canada doesn't have that many universities, right? So compared to the US, there are only a few universities in Canada, pretty much less about, publicly funded universities are less than 50, if I'm not, mistaken, maybe even closer to the 30 range, compared to the US that has hundreds of thousands of both public and private universities. So that's an advantage in the sense that you can actually go through every single school in Canada, right, to see whether they have an opportunity for you. It might be very difficult to do the same thing for the US because of the sheer volume, right? But with Canada, if you're a focused and dedicated student, you should know all the universities in Canada right now, and you should be able to search for information on those schools. Now, how do you get funded to Canada? So I'm not talking about undergraduates here, because for undergrad, most of the time you would have to pay your international tuition fees, except you're like, one of those like really genius undergraduate students. Maybe you had like straight A's in your WAEC, and then, you've just like had like a stellar extracurricular record. That way you can apply there. Most universities would have like, academic excellence scholarship. University of Toronto has it. Osgood has it, Regina, Saskatchewan. Most of these schools have it, but it's you have to be quite exceptional to get it. But if you're able to pay part of your tuition, you can also get a partial international, student scholarship as well. So I'm not really focusing on the undergrad because the opportunities for those are quite limited. But for a master's and a PhD, let me start with the PhD. For a PhD, it's very simple because for most PhD programs in Canada, you're going to get a scholarship, right? You're going to get some form of funding package. So basically they pay you to come to school, right? So now it may not be, it's just going to be a livable wage, right? It's not going to be like a luxurious amount of money. You're just going to be able to pay your rent, eat, and go to school, like literally that's it. But at least it gives you get access to, and this is one of the things people don't realize, as a doctoral candidate, even with a master's, you can teach, right? In school, you can, apply for research assistantship, teaching assistantships. You can even actually teach a whole course, depending on what your study permit says. So as a doctoral student in Canada, there are lots of opportunities to work while you're schooling and do meaningful work, not like, just work in McDonald's. There's nothing wrong with working in McDonald's if you need to keep body and soul together. I've done all sorts of work here in Canada, but I'm saying that, there's opportunities for academic work that can supplement whatever stipend you're being given, and that stipend could take on different forms. For some departments, they just pay your school fees for you and they give you a set amount every year. For some departments, they would attach your funding to you doing a certain type of work. So maybe you teaching, or you being a research assistant or something like that, or you working in a lab. So it really depends on your program, but most times a PhD will be funded. The difficulty is with getting a supervisor, right? Who would then say, I want to work with you for the PhD. But if you're able to get that, most times you're going to get like a funded PhD. And beyond that, for PhD students, you also have a lot of external scholarships you can apply for in Canada. So even as an international student, you can apply for the Trudeau Scholarship. They give only a few number of people every year, but I know international students have gotten it in the past. There's also the Vanier Scholarship, which I got. There's also, I think, the SHRC scholarship that you can apply for as well. And there are also always, field specific scholarships. So I'm a lawyer, I would know the scholarships in my field. I know that there was the CG scholarship. I know there's the John Humphrey scholarship. There are also going to be scholarships in your university. For example, the New College, scholarship that I got it's a university wide scholarship at University of Toronto. I forget this one scholarship now, but there's so many. They're usually scholarships within your university. So what you need to look out for if you're doing a PhD and even a master's, you look for scholarships within your university. You look for scholarships outside your university from third-party funding bodies, like some of the ones I've just mentioned. You also need to look for scholarships that are within your field of interest. So law scholarships in my case. In your case, it might be engineering scholarships. The final thing you need to look for are scholarships that target your demography. So for example, the PO scholarship is a scholarship for international students that are women, So I was eligible for that. The Delta Kappa Gamma scholarship is also one for women. So when you're approaching the scholarships game, you don't just say, okay, I'm going to Canada, there's one Vanier I've been hearing about, and that's all you're going to rely on. No, you need to look at what are the different places where I qualify for funding and then apply for those, opportunities. Now for the master's, it's a little bit tricky because not so tricky. It's almost kind of similar to the PhD as well, because for the most of the funded master's programs, they're research-based programs. So for those of you who want to come to Canada, Canada is big on research. In fact, when we put on the news at night, they're not interviewing pop stars on TV. They're actually interviewing professors on the news. That's really what happens. Like they're so big on research that, but most of the people that are going to be interviewing is, one professor from this school who did this research, one professor from that school who did that research. So it's a huge research-based culture. And if you want to come here on a master's, your best bet is to apply for a research-based master's program that will give you funding similar to a PhD. So let me just leave it there in case there are other questions.
Yeah, I see a lot of people tuning in from on our Facebook page. People are saying, amazing. Thank God I'm in and all of that. You are dropping some gems, and we are also doing some sort of write-ups as well in the comment section, just to keep the comment section active. But if you really do have any questions as at this point, please do drop it, and I'll be sure to client in to ask it. So I'm going to ask you a question based on my ideology. Now, coming in for a master's in UK, I had absolutely no idea where to start from. Now, can you give a brief of trajectory for somebody who is a novice in this scholarship? 1, 2, 3. What should a person do first, second, third, in that order? And at what points have they gotten to that you think that they are good to go?
Okay, so the first thing you should do is to have an Excel sheet. If you're going to apply for scholarships, you need this Excel sheet. I have what I call an opportunities master list. I'm not too old for it. I'm not too big for it. Anytime I see an opportunity, I put it there. Now, you need to be able to visualize these opportunities. You need to be able to know what the opportunities are, because if you don't know what the opportunities are, you cannot prepare for them. Right? So the first job you have, if you're new on this scholarship journey, is visualization. You need to be able to see where you are trying to go to, right? Or see what you're trying to achieve, see the degree that you're trying to get. So what does that entail? It entails research. So now we're focused on Canada. In fact, there's the pre-work of where do you even want to go in the first place. But I'm just going to assume that you know that you want to come to Canada, okay? Because this session is focused on Canada. But if you haven't made that decision, you need to figure it out. Where do you really want to go? Why do you want to go to those locations, right? Otherwise, you're just going to be shooting your arrows all around the place and you're not going to be focused. So let's say you've decided that it's Canada. The first thing you need to do is, what program are you looking for? For some people, I looked, for example, when I was doing my master's, when I was trying to apply for my master's, I did look at Canada. And I looked at the University of Toronto. And the first thing I saw was that University of Toronto, for the master's, there's almost no scholarship. So I didn't bother to apply because a scholarship was very important to me, right? So it's important for you to go through all the different programs that you are potentially interested in the different schools, to see whether there's actually funding available. Now, if there's a scholarship available, that's great. The next step is, what is the requirements to get the scholarship? Now, you need to do what I call an assessment, a self-assessment. To what extent do I meet the requirements for the scholarship? One of the things I tell people sometimes is that you may actually not apply for a scholarship the year you find that scholarship. You may need to wait for a year or two. I've had this Commonwealth Shared Scholarship in mind since my first year in university. I didn't get it until after I graduated, but I had looked at that scholarship. I knew the kind of profile they were looking for. I knew academic excellence was required. So every single term in school, I did my best because I was trying to, make sure my grades were very high. What else did I do? I was involved in extracurricular activities. Pardon me. I was involved in extracurricular activities. I did a lot of those things to build my profile so that when it was time to apply, I knew that there was almost nobody who could hold a candle to me, right? So I knew that I was among the best of the best. So, but if I didn't know what the requirements were, in uni, I might have just acted anyhow, I might not have bother to do anything. But if you know what the requirements are, if you see that they require research papers, it's time for you to start writing. It's time for you to start researching. It's time for you to start building your profile. Another thing I always encourage people to do is, if you're new to this game, follow fellow scholars, people like Lois, and don't just follow scholars who are in your field, because it's almost like a shortcut, right? You know that this person is doing biochemistry. Just look at what they are involved in. In fact, what are they tweeting? Whose tweets are they liking? Who are they following? You kind of just have to do like a very stealthy, okay, which conference did they attend? What happens at that conference? Can I also attend this conference, right? Another thing you can look at are the profiles of the people in your graduate program. Look at their profiles. What have they done? So that's the first work you need to do if you're just new on this journey. You need to visualize, because if you cannot visualize, you cannot do the work. Now, after you visualize, it's now time to put in the work. You need to start gathering your documents. You need to start, if you're doing a research-based program, you need to start writing. It took me months upon months to write my research proposal. You need to write a research proposal that is convincing and that is relevant both on a global and on a local level. You can't just write about, you want to do something relating to Ghana, or you want to do something relating to Nigeria, and you're not connecting it to a global issue or to an issue that your supervisor has the competence to supervise. It is unlikely that you will be successful. So if you want to look at customary marriage or customary marriage in Nigeria, that research is not useful to, rarely going to be useful to a Canadian school, except you now say something. So I'm a lawyer. So you now say something like, okay, maybe that research is not just about customary marriage, but maybe about how customary marriages in Africa are actually more advanced than a traditional conception of marriage from a Western perspective. Or you're saying customary marriage in this particular tribes in Africa have some similarities with, the marriage practices in indigenous societies in Canada. And you now want to conduct an analysis of whether 1, 2, 3 things. So that's the difference between somebody who is thinking with a global mindset and someone who's thinking with a local mindset. So you come and meet let's say the Professor Sam Bowie or wherever from UBC, and you're writing to him that you want to research customary marriage in Elisha in Nigeria, and he doesn't know anything about it. So unless you're able to translate that research into a language that he understands, using some of his work and his experience as a basis upon which you have chosen him, you will not be successful. So don't also focus only on the scholarship. Actually, focus on building yourself, focus on building your competence, focus on building your expertise. Because when you do that, you'll be able to attract the right people who would want to work with you.
I in the middle, I just wanted to be like, because I'm learning, and I always say that we hosted a session together where we spoke about how to handle rejections and all of that, and I learned a lot. Like there was a lot of takeaway messages. Like when I'm now doing something to assist somebody or something that volunteering, I'm even too excited to do it because I know that it's counting to a portfolio, is building me up in terms of expertise to be able to go for that scholarship. And so when I'm doing it with all joy. And I also like the point where you said connected on all levels of, so I always say that look at it from a global perspective, look at it from an international perspective, look at it from a local perspective. How would you be able to connect all the three so that the funders know that they are able to give back to society? So there was a project I was part of, and it's happening in the UK, but they know that they can give back to Bangladesh because the person who is part of the scholarship is working in Bangladesh. Now they're looking at how they can channel it to Africa as well. And you see, it gives them a student who is ready to, attack all issues on all levels. And I think that's amazing. There are a lot of questions, but I think that just to be able to make this go quicker, I'll just go through my series of questions and we can take the questions. Like I said, please do put it in the chat box. We will answer them like we are answering them. Gems. So one of the questions I also had was that, so you made mention of gathering all your document, doing an Excel sheet just to keep up with the opportunities, and also gathering your document. So I would ask that, what documents do you think, and I'm talking from a novice point of view, should they have as of now?
Okay, so it depends on your program, right? So some programs, like for example, architecture, would even ask you for a portfolio. That's so irrelevant for a program like law. So you need to really go and search what your program requirements are. And it depends, but I'm just going to give you a quick rundown. You most likely have to submit a kind of resume or a CV. Sometimes they have a format, sometimes they don't. If they don't have a format, well, what you need to think about is the fact that your resume is one of the few documents you'll be submitting. So if you just have a list of things that without showing your accomplishments, without showing how you stand out, you're on the wrong path, right? You need to also have usually like a personal statement or, responses to like an essay prompt. Depending on the program, there could be more than one, personal statement or, essays. It really just depends. You would also, for a research-based program or even just some other programs, for example, I know that the Oxford Masters in Law and the Harvard Masters in Law, even though they're not research-based, they do ask you to submit a form of a writing sample. So sometimes you have to demonstrate. For most PhDs, you would submit a writing sample. What is a writing sample? It's like an article that you have written, like an article or something that it will be part of your dissertation, anything to show that you can actually write and communicate. You could also be asked to submit a research proposal depending on what you're applying for. Now, the other documents you would need obviously are your transcript to show your academic, prowess and your academic background. You would also need to submit reference letters. I know it's a lot of documents now that I'm mentioning it. You would also need to submit reference letters from people who can say, look, we know this person, they're amazing, this is what they've done, this is why you should admit them. Other things you might need to do, you might also need to do an interview depending on your program. Some people would interview professors. You might need to send an email to professors before you even submit an application, depending on your program. Because there's some programs that say that you need to get like an approval from a supervisor before you can actually even apply in the first place. So those are just like some of the core documents that you would need. I'm sure I've missed out one or two, but those are basically the major documents that you need. And obviously, yes, if you need to write some standardized tests like the IELTS, the GRE, and so on, you obviously need to do those as well.
Absolutely. So the next question I want to know is that we've spoken a lot about research, and I understand that Canada is based on research and development. So most of our academic courses is channeled to that. Do you know of any, is there any funding opportunities for course-based programs?
So I think for the course-based programs, there are some, but they're usually very much on the basis of academic merit. Right. So it's rarely, you could get someone in needs-based, on a needs basis, but they're mostly on the basis of academic merit, and they're not as many. So your chances are not as high as if you're doing a research-based program. For those research-based programs, that once you get admitted, you're good, right? You're going to get money. But with the other programs, I think there's just a lot of anxiety, except you can pay for part of it, of course. So, there's just a lot of anxiety around, you being able to pay the rest of the fees, even if you get some kind of funding. Also bear it in mind that, unfortunately, universities are businesses, and not all their programs are are research-based, because they have to balance, and get school fees for the course-based programs. So, I think it all depends on the particular program that you've applied to. As I said, there are always third-party scholarships that you can consider, but it really depends on your program. So MBAs, I know that there are a lot of third-party scholarships for MBAs. I know that I think it's called the Mo Ibrahim. It's an MBA scholarship for top schools, I think mostly in the US and in the UK. I don't think any Canadian school is qualified. You're qualified in any Canadian school. I know that there's also the Forte Foundation MBA scholarships for women. So you really do have to think, if you're thinking about those cost-based programs, you have to think outside the box, and not just wait for the school to fund you, because the school is actually waiting for your fees, because it's part of they have to make money. So
absolutely. Yeah, talking about Mo Ibrahim, I've heard of Mo Ibrahim a lot. I know a friend also at UBC, Savannah Business School, who is also on the MasterCard Foundation scholarship. So those are third parties as well. You can also look out for if you're listening to us. So the next question would be, what is the visa application process like, and what any travel arrangement? Is it easier when you get a scholarship? If you've not got a scholarship, do you need to get like a student student loan? Does it affect your visa application? Something like that.
So with the visas, I'm usually very hesitant to speak about that. Well, first, because you need to actually, legally, you should only have like registered immigration consultant talk to you about visas. So there's literally a limit to what I can say. But what I will say is that for the Canadian visa, a lot of things change very quickly. So information that is valid today might not be valid tomorrow. But what I will say about visa applications is please check the IRCC website. It's a pretty straightforward process. It can take some time because there's a huge demand for Canada. But what I will say with regards to visa is never lie on your application. Don't lie on your visa applications. Make sure you're as coherent and as clear as possible. I feel like sometimes the way we submit documents, even the visa officer is confused, and confusion is a recipe for getting a no. So a lot of times you have to make sure that you're very clear. You need to submit a study plan. Let them understand why you're trying to do this program. Don't let it be like, oh, I just want to jackpot, that kind of stuff. Let there be a real and compelling reason. And if you are having like a career switch, or you're switching your background or whatever, the onus is on you to be extremely clear about why you're trying to do this switch. Make sure that there's no doubt in the visa, the officer's mind that you're a genuine student. So just for legal reasons, that's how much I can say about the visa application process. But if you visit the IRCC website, honestly, it's super comprehensive. And if you need to reach out to an immigration consultant, there are quite a couple of them who do good work. That you can try InfoPlace Canada. There's also Citadel Global Agency on Instagram. You can follow them. They share tips all the time, and they're legally authorized to do so.
Absolutely. So before, I can see a lot of questions, but before I have one last question from me. Then
Absolutely.
obviously from the questions, definitely things might pop up when it comes to studying in Canada. What is life as a student in Canada, and what are the job opportunities in Canada? I know like people have heard things, let's straighten things, let's clear out some things and set things straight. Life as a student, what are the job opportunities in Canada?
Okay, so I quite like it here. I'm not gonna lie to you. I mean, it's really cold, and it takes some getting used to. I always tell a joke about my first winter. Anytime it's like, just even 5 degrees. Now I say 5 degrees is just because 5 degrees now is good weather, because I've gotten used to it. But when it's like 5 degrees, I'm wearing like my snow boots, even though there's no snow, and I'm wearing my winter jacket. Now I'm sure I can go out in shorts in 5 degrees. Like it is, but my point is like, there's always the adjustment period when it comes to like the weather and all of that. But Canadians are generally quite nice people. No society is perfect, but it's not a bad place to try to work, right? And life as a student, I think, is you have access to a lot of opportunities. You have like job opportunities on campus, off campus, within obviously your student visa allowance. I think during the summers you can work full time. If you can get like an internship, that's amazing. So I don't really think there's much discrimination between like international students and domestic students, quite frankly, when it comes to opportunities, because they know that if you're a good international student, or if a company likes you, you can get a work permit and you can work. Like it's not a problem at all. So I do think there are lots of opportunities as a student, also lots of scholarship opportunities, opportunities to work on exciting projects with the supervisors and so on and so forth. So it really depends on how much you give, right? When I got into U of T, I got a job on campus within like 2 weeks, right? I was like a student, a peer advisor, and I got a job within because I needed money as well. And it was just a perfect job. I think that was the only one I actually applied to. It was just like a perfect job because it fit with what I like to do, which is like counseling students and things like that. So, I didn't struggle to find a job on campus. You can work in the library, you can do a lot of things, and low stress, kinds of jobs. You would even have enough money to enjoy yourself and, do a few nice things here and there as well. The other thing is job opportunities. Of course, like if you study, depending on the course you study, you're eligible for, make sure you're coming to a university that is accredited so that you can, get like a work permit. That's an accredited designated learning institution, a DLI, that's what it's called. So you can get a work permit. So it depends on how long your course, this course you studied is. You can get up to 1 year or 3 years work permit. And, even during that period, you can work towards getting your permanent residency and citizenship and so on and so forth. So work-wise, I think there are a lot of jobs in Canada. I do think the Canadian job market is very different in how, in terms of how to navigate it. A lot of people coming from, immigrants coming from, outside the country have a very stoic mindset when it comes to job applications. I see a job on Indeed, I apply, I get it or I don't get it. It's beyond that in Canada. There's a lot of networking. I've heard it before, but I didn't know how much it was a thing until I really did come here. So you really have to connect with people and have a good mindset with networking. Don't think of it as a chore. Look at it as an opportunity to really meet people, learn about their lives, learn about their work. There are a lot of jobs that aren't posted. Or someone just needs something real quick and it turns into another opportunity and it becomes another opportunity and it becomes something else. So you need to be very willing to go out of your comfort zone. I always say that if you come to Canada, while your local community or your immigrant community is important and you need to be connected with them, you shouldn't limit yourself to just, so I'm a Nigerian and my friends are only Nigerians. No, you need to expand. You need to expand. You need to build social capital in the new country. You need to meet people from all over the world and, let them teach you a few things. Also, as a student, be close friends with local students as well, because they know so much that you don't know. You know even just where to buy the best food. They know it, but you don't know. So I think for an international student, there's lots of opportunities here. There's also something I would say about your mindset. The mindset that you have and the people that you talk to will really shape the experience you get out of Canada. I remember when I first came to Canada, one of the first few people that I met when I came here had a very pessimistic mindset, so they had done like a program and this was a guy that done a program and I guess things weren't working out for them the way they wanted to. And, they were a lawyer and they just had only negative things to say. And I said, look, that's your story. That's not mine. And looking back, I can see how much of a difference, how different my story has been so far. So your mindset is going to really affect how much you get out of Canada, to be honest.